Starseeds are the guardians of Terra who hold the knowledge of our ancestors. They are the inner earth beings that come to guide us with their wisdom. They are the enlightened beings from all over the galaxies that come to Terra like comets of light. They are the pioneers, the way-showers, and the architects of a new world. One built upon integrity, unity, and love. These are their stories. Join us as they share their journey of hope, as they break down paradigms and limiting beliefs, as they share their challenges and struggles to fit into the very society they are here to shift. The good, the bad, the everything. This is a journey of a starseed. Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to my channel. This is a really special episode of Journey of a Starseed that I believe might come into a series in and of itself. But I'd love to introduce my guest today, Lawrence August. It's such a pleasure to have you today. Welcome.
Hi, Sherri. This is awesome. I've been waiting for this date for a while. It's great to finally get this FaceTime going with you.
Yeah, well, so I just so everyone knows, I found you through Heidi Pop, which is a good friend of mine, and we've done several interviews together.
Yeah.
And I was like, Heidi, I want to have him come on my channel because nutrition is a whole huge subject that I have talked about, but it's not really my particular area of concentration. And so I think that you complement a lot of what I talk about, and we work a lot with Starseed children, and not just
Absolutely.
children in general. We're not being exclusive. And I think this topic of food, nutrition, and behavior and healthy eating habits is so important right now. And I get a lot of questions about it from parents all over the world. And so I wanted to pick your brain a little bit today. But before we get started,
Sure.
can you tell everyone a little bit about your journey and how you got to kids getting healthy, which is kind of which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
yeah.
I'm going to give you the kind of quick,
Okay.
quick bullet point. Hello, everyone. I'm Lawrence August. So yeah, the journey. Wow. As far as just being in nutrition in general, like in a professional sense, it goes back into the 90s. And my entry into it was, back then it was sports nutrition. That was my mindset back then. That evolved into more holistic nutrition, if you will, right? Um, the journey to get to the kids is an interesting one. So kind of map out the timeline. Back in 2007, I'm also a songwriter. So I was in a studio working on some music for a kids group. And the group, they were called Jam X, and they were all about getting up, getting moving, right? Fitness. It was a really fun project for me. And I got a call out of the blue from my stepbrother in Arizona, who I hadn't heard from in a while. And he had a nonprofit that I knew about, and it was geared toward childhood obesity. And he happened to call me on this day that I was in the studio, and he said, I just kind of reaching out, wondering if you could put some music together for my program for the kids. I said, I'm actually in a studio right now, as you're calling me, working on that kind of material. And so that kind of planted a seed early on. We're going back 2007. Ended up writing a bunch of original songs for his program. And then I just started getting more involved with it, because I have this nutrition background. It was really fun to kind of work on his program, help him with the workbook, put together programs while adding to the creative side. If we move forward some years, I ended up landing a job as a nutritionist at the Center for Integrative Medicine. It's here in Tarzana, California. Very cool opportunity for me. It's a unique practice, the busiest solo practice in LA. It's an MD who runs his practice with a bend toward, natural alternatives. So at that office, we had a natural pharmacy. And through that time there, as his nutritionist, I did over 8,500 consultations. I co-ran the pharmacy. And during that time, for the nonprofit, for the childhood obesity nonprofit, I was put on the board at that point and had a lot more say in the organization. 2019 is when I decided to leave the office that I was at to put more time into Accept the Challenge, which is the nonprofit for the kids. And things were really going along well. We were really kind of expanding our reach, putting on a lot of live events. I got to visit schools. It was a great time. And then 2020, so kind of, bring it up to speed, but 2020 happened. We all know what went down there. Our live events were shut down. I was also doing kind of as a side hustle, nutrition at a local gym. The gym was closed, and I could kind of see the writing on the wall. I saw this big opportunity, for years and years and years on the nonprofit side, just seeing kind of what was done and, more importantly, what wasn't being done for kids. At the school level, the funding level, that's a whole rabbit hole. We could probably have a show on that, Sherri, on that. And you're nodding your head because as well as anybody.
Yeah, I have my mic muted because there's noise in the background. But yeah, if we could do a series on that.
Yeah. So this was where the idea for Kids Get Healthy was born. And I decided to kind of fast track the situation and kind of, niche down and target children, families that needed help. Because everything kind of pivoted to virtual, it ended up being a very interesting, actually unique opportunity at that time. I got a certification as a youth nutrition specialist, launched the website kidsgethealthy.com, and I was sort of off and running. That's sort of like where we're at now. Now, Kids Get Healthy was originally intended just to kind of bring me business, right? As I've seen the potential for what I'm doing and only being one of me, I see a huge opportunity to broaden that out to, a larger team where Kids Get Healthy goes far beyond me, beyond just my own kind of landing page. So that's basically the backstory on how Kids Get Healthy was started.
Oh, I love it. I love the total organic and non-traditional paths, because I think that there's so much authenticity in that. In my path, it's so much similar. I always do interviews and people ask me, oh, how did you start working with children? Right. And it's funny because my whole first part of my life, I never thought about children. I mean, I knew I was going to be a mother one day and aspired to that, but I was, I was focused solely on animals. And
sure.
And so the way I got to what I do now was total just one thing leading to the other that I wasn't necessarily expecting, nor did I see coming, actually.
Right.
And so I think I love those stories of transformation because I think that each experience builds on the next.
Yes.
Each one builds on the last one, and it contributes so much to your validity in your journey and why you're doing what you're doing. Because a lot of people step into something that maybe they feel like they had to do, or they choose jobs for money, or they choose things because their parents said, oh, this is what you should do.
Yeah.
And then they end up really, a lot of the times, not always, but a lot of times hating it. And then they resent their family or whomever for pushing them down a path that they weren't ready for and didn't want. So I feel now more than ever, I see people finding their way in a non-traditional path, and it's just one thing leads to where, and the next thing you know, you're like, I love what I'm doing. I would have never thought about this before, right?
Yeah. You're just kind of following along and following the breadcrumbs, and it's exactly how it happened for me. I never really imagined. I mean, nutrition has been a passion of mine for 40 years now. Kind of crazy to think like next August I'm going to be 50. It's like, whoa. But from the age of 8, and having my own challenges at a young age with some health scares, unbeknownst to me at the time, that I think that there was probably an original seed there of this need to, being in Children's Memorial Hospital in Chicago, seeing sick children, and then this path along the way, and these wonderful, serendipitous moments like the phone call in the studio, and even, I would say, even this calamity of 2020, all of these circumstances just led me there. So it has been a very organic path. I'd never set out to be like the kids guy,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
here we
right.
are. And I'm not a parent. And, that's an interesting thing, that's something that I thought about. It was one of those decisions I made based on, helping many of my adult clients, where they would just ask me out of the blue, like, well, what about, I'm dealing with a problem with my kid. And they knew that I was involved with the nonprofit, and just helping people and seeing what I was doing was working. Why would I deny that? So I don't have my own children. And I'm perfectly okay with that. If people would rather work with someone who, has children. But so it is also very interesting to be kind of here, and as a man in this space, because it's pretty much dominated children's health. If you sort of looked at the internet landscape, it's dominated by females, which is cool.
True, very true.
Yeah,
But you know what? Sometimes it's
it's
nice to have,
non-traditional.
and yeah, and sometimes it's nice to have a perspective of someone that isn't in it. Sometimes it's, and this is true for every aspect of life. When you're too close to something, sometimes you don't see the possible solutions because you're wrapped up in
Yeah,
the thick of everything. And that's the same for parenting. So sometimes other people can offer advice for us as parents that we hadn't thought of because we're just so focused on this one area. And you
right.
come in and you bring this whole other element, which I think is great. How let's start the conversation off
Sure.
with how important, in your opinion, of course,
Mhm.
this is about your expertise. How important
Sure.
do you think the nutrition of our children really impacts their livelihood, their ability to thrive, their whole world? How important is it?
Boy. Well, you want to be kind of on a 1 to 10,
Sure.
like a 11,000.
I know, right?
It's absolutely important. Nutrition is, I see it as our way of, I see nutrition as information, right? I see
Mhm.
that, to kind of get interstellar about it. Heidi and I, we did a visit to a school,
Mhm.
and I'm with an organization called Rainbow Chefs, and we, teach culinary class to kids. And when you really think about the skin of the planet, right, just kind of passing through space and being covered in stardust, right, and quite literally the soil is nourished from, every bit part of the universe, and everything going in there, and there is information encoded. All of that soil turns into food. That food kind of interacts with our body, and we are really unlocking, I think it's kind of this funny thing to hear about the word intuition, right? I think that the closer we can get to that source, we can unlock more and more of our intuition. So the physical parts of it, I could talk all day on. But if we look at every other aspect, we're just talking about overall health. Um, it definitely ties into the emotional side. We know that food impacts the gut, and the gut impacts the brain, and the brain impacts mental health, and on and on and on. But even from a deep core spiritual level, if you will, this information, this unpacking of information through our food, I'm a firm believer in that idea. So the closer that we can kind of get to that, you know, to that organic source, I think that just enhances our overall experience.
Absolutely. And I think one of the most dark and nefarious aspects of the our reality, let's just say,
Yeah.
is the abomination of the nutrition for people. And I think that that's designed on purpose. We won't get into conspiracies right now. I think
Right.
most
Right.
people
Not right now, but
they,
let's do it.
we'll save that for another talk. But I think
Yeah.
most people that watch my channel already know where I'm at with that. So I think one of the biggest disservices that we have as a collective is our education and our introduction of food to children. I mean, just look at, we talked a little bit about the food in the schools. And it's absolutely crazy what the majority of our children are eating in the school system. And that's the only choice that many families have. And so
Sure.
that is a whole conversation in and of itself, but also, you know, the imbalance in the food scale, that the food pyramid, which I believe is completely wrong and off. It's like
Sure.
we're not educated properly from the moment that we're introduced to food, so we develop bad habits because of the way that we are, the role models that we have on TV, the commercials that we, I mean, every facet of our
Correct.
reality is designed to push us in a direction of obesity, in my opinion, and malnutrition and dis-ease. And our poor children are subject to that from a fresh start, with, and especially with all the candy and things like that. And
Sure.
that is a real problem that we have. And I think the reason I'm putting this on Journey of a Starseed series as opposed to just the regular channel content is because I believe our children are more sensitive than ever before, because I
Yes.
think previous generations, our the physical bodies were more anchored into 3D. So we were just
Yes.
adapted. We adapted to it. We just, it is what it is, or was what it was, however you say
Yes.
that. But
Yeah.
the new earth children are coming in and they are very sensitive, and their bodies are telling them no, they're too high vibrational. They won't accept, and they have more allergies and reactions to the foods that we eat. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Like what direction would you like me to take on that? There was
Just the
a few things there.
sensitivity of the
Uh,
children with the food
yeah.
and the processed food and the sugars and all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. You're dead on right. I mean, we're in a new time now where there is a heightened sensitivity among our young ones. And there's some great opportunities because I think that there's a lot of concepts that seem real heady for parents, that they feel like maybe it's too much to introduce to children, right? But I use techniques uh, that, through a lot of A/B testing, right? Many consultations worth of kind of a trial and error, where I've really found a way to open that up with children, where
Mhm.
you know I'm a big believer in that there's a spectrum, right? So in the sense of there's not good people, bad people, right? We talk about relationship with food, right? We're trying to kind of get children to have this relationship with food. And there's good in people, there can be bad in people, right? There are qualities that people exhibit, but that is not the person in total, in sum. And with children, introducing them to the idea of nuance is a great way to bring food in. And an example I would give is most children could understand a question like, is water bad for you? Right? Is water dangerous? And they start thinking about that because it's kind of an interesting question for a kid. You get great answers. And depending on where their head is at, they may say one or the other, but you could explore that. They may say, no, well, water's good, right? I love water. I like drinking water, right? And I say, okay, well, what if you couldn't swim, and you were thrown in some water, water could be a problem maybe, right? But if
Mhm.
you were walking in the desert and you needed a drink, water would be the greatest thing in the world, right? And these simple concepts begin to introduce, what you're setting up is you're introducing this idea of nuance.
Mhm.
And why that matters with food is that they're going to be surrounded by, I mean, we live in a world, right, where there is a food environment that is kind of scary, right? And but we don't want to kind of approach that in fear. And we can simply map that analogy of, good and bad on top of food. And okay, what does this food do for you? What are you getting from this food? If you're starving, right? If you're starving, a Twinkie could save your life. I mean, that's the true answer, is a Twinkie could be life-saving medicine if you're starving. But if you only ate Twinkies, what would happen? And it's these kind of questions where you can wake up their imagination and you can expose them to that idea of nuance. And you can simply ask them questions like about their friends, right? These are real relationships. Hey, do you have a friend that you like to hang out with once in a while, but maybe if you hung out with them all the time, they wouldn't be so much fun. And they, oh yeah, okay. And they can begin to understand it as there is a spectrum, there is nuance to that. So that's something that's really, really fun to do, because then you can find their imagination start to go, and then they begin to sort of see food from a different perspective, right?
Yeah.
And then you're empowering, Heidi and I, we were talking about that. She loves when I'm all about that, right? I'm all about really bringing along a child to the point where they're just at the wheel. They're able to make decisions on their own about food. That's the end game, right? That's the goal.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's about teaching them the foundations, the importance, the significance, the about balance, and then you hope that they make the right decisions. I have this rule in my house with my daughter. She likes to overindulge because she genuinely just likes food. I think it's also a comfort for her. So it's like the one thing in the world she can control. When she's having anxiety or an emotional experience, her go-to is, I'm going to eat that food because it's going to fill her up physically, but it makes her feel safe and secure and in control of something. So we talk about what she's choosing to fill herself up with, if that's what she needs in that moment. Do you really want that cookie? And what does that cookie, is that cookie going to do for you?
Right.
Or do you want this banana or an apple or something a little bit more healthy? And teaching them how they both react with their body and the result of that food, and what is the input and the output, and then let them choose. And sometimes they're going to choose, there are times where I have this long chat and then she looks at me, she looks at the cookie, she said, Mom, I'm going to have the cookie. And I say, okay, have the cookie. I'm not going to shame her. And sometimes we just have to let them make that decision,
Correct. And with all that you said, this is an incredibly common, issue. One of my core principles that I love to bring up is that hunger always wins, right? And so if you're thinking of it from a standpoint of teaching a child not only about food, but how to approach food, how to approach their body, right? How do they get in touch with this idea of hunger? So it can walk a child or a parent a lot of times, or both, through that process of this idea that hunger always wins. And what foods can we go to? What foods can satisfy us? And what foods have less of a chance to do that? And that can be an important concept to introduce to a child. So when they are going through their head on making that decision, they've got a little bit of extra information and insight on what that is. And to give an example, I would use a brake pedal analogy in that sense. So I would say there are certain foods that they are designed, right? So, and depending on the child's age, I can walk them further down this, right? So if it's somebody that's 10, 11 years old, they could certainly understand the idea of advertising and companies that their job is to get you to like the food, buy the food. And do you think it would be in their interest to sell you some food that would make you want to eat more of it? And they say, yeah, they understand that. So what is it about that food that doesn't satisfy you as fast as other foods, right? So that you essentially, it's like getting into a car. Now imagine if you got into a car and the brake pedal's not working that great. You would love to slow down. It's not that you don't want to, right? And so to tell a child to stop, it's very difficult. It would be like telling us, it'd be for me to tell you stop at 1 or stop at 2 of certain foods is going to be hard, because it would be me expecting you to stop the car and with a brake pedal that doesn't work. And certain foods, they have a very good brake pedal. You can eat them and you're able to stop at an appropriate time. You can actually get a sense of fullness. And those are just very real things that a child can actually understand quite well. And that is a very useful tool, because when they know that tool, and then we can get even further into it of the order of how to eat the food. And that hunger always wins thing is true, because as human beings, we're going to eat when we're hungry and we'll eat till we're full. But hunger, that's one step down. Why are we hungry? Are we physically hungry? Are we emotionally hungry? that kind of hunger can win too. So it can get, you know, a couple layers deep. But these are the ways that we can kind of introduce it to younger, you know, younger ones, where they kind of like, you know, this is as a parent, it's like analogy stories. It's very engaging if you can put together narratives and stories and visuals that they can understand, and then you kind of bring food along for that ride.
Yeah, children, that's how they learn the best. They need to
Right.
really relate to what you're saying instead of you talking at them. You talk with them, you explain, you give them metaphors. It works really well. They understand it much better, and I think that it helps a lot. You know, how do you work through the notion of, because I have this in my house, and I have a lot of parents say the same thing. Are you hungry because do you want to eat because you're hungry, or do you want to eat because you're bored and you have nothing else to do? This happens all the time. Children just like, they're just like, oh, I want to have this cookie, or they're not even thinking about it. They're unconsciously walking to the kitchen, opening the cabinet because they're watching TV or something. They don't even realize that they're getting into the food because they're not even hungry. It's just like, oh, I gotta go
Right.
eat something.
Right. It's
But how do you
reflexive.
coach them through recognizing that's what's happening right now? Or how do you teach them or coach them to, are you hungry? Are you actually hungry right
Yeah.
now?
It is a series of, you know, a technique that I use overall, but before we even get it to that point, but to sort of set that up, if I were to get that kind of insight from a parent ahead of time,
Mhm.
I would have a path to get there that would include a few steps that could preclude that. The technique that I use, it's grounded, it's called motivational interviewing. And I kind of have my own spin on it. But are you familiar with motivational interviewing, or
A little bit,
a
but
little bit?
let's
Yeah,
talk about it.
kind of for the audience. So motivational interviewing is sort of, it's client centered, right? Where the objective is to me being the expert, right? Okay. I could go on and on about this food does that, this food does that. It's very uninteresting for a child.
Right.
Extremely like talk about getting tuned out, right?
Mhm.
What
Yes.
what motivational interviewing will do is it will put the child as the expert, right? And what I mean is not the child as the nutritional expert, but the child as the expert of them, right? And it is a great way for me, as I'm kind of working with the child, to establish really good rapport. So what I would do at the beginning is, first, what I'd like to say is, um, on a 1 to 10, I love doing the 1 to 10, right? On a 1 to 10, how excited are you to be here with me today? And it could be, if it's a 1 and you really, really don't want to do this, let me know. That's fine. If it's a 10 and you're super excited, high five, I'm happy, but it's whatever it's going to be, right? Kind of takes the
Uh-huh.
pressure off. We laugh about it. It's a 3. I've had that. Okay, so what would it take to get it to a 4? What could get it to a 4? How could you? What would be fun about this process, right? So you're kind of introducing to the conversation of, I'm checking in with you, and now all of a sudden they're like, okay, this guy's actually, he wants to know what I have to say. My opinion matters. And what you do is you use that to open up those inroads where you can then further down the line begin to ask questions of like, you know, what is it that you notice through the day? What do you really like about food? Right? You can start asking a question. What's your favorite food? 1 to 10. Okay, it's this food. And why do you like that? And why, you said a 9? Why isn't it a 2? Or you said a 2. You don't like broccoli. Broccoli's a 2. Why isn't it a 4? And what that does is it starts to set the process where you can kind of tease out what are the important issues. So then by the time you get to the whole like sofa, going to the cupboard, going, sitting down, you've already now got a process going, hopefully, right? With any luck, if you've done this right. Because often I'll go several sessions and not even talk about food, Sherri. I mean, some of my biggest successes have been where we've gone 5, 6 weeks and we haven't even talked about food. And the parents are like, are we going to talk about food? I'm like, nope, we're not there yet. Just trust me, right?
Yep.
Then when you can get to that conversation, you've now, if you've done your work right, you've established a bit of a camaraderie and a teamwork here where like we're solving problems together, right? Well, tell me what you could do. Like maybe, do you think like sometimes you might grab too much just because you're not thinking about it? Like tell me what you could do to maybe come up with a system. What could we do here? Now that would be maybe a 9 or 10-year-old, right? It's a little trickier if it's a child who's 5, 6, right? Because at that point, questions aren't working as well as where then you would have the parent along. And this from your background, is that children have a hard time articulating when they're very young what the heck they're even thinking, they're processing. So it's our job to try to observe, state to the best of our ability what we think they might be feeling and experiencing, and just acknowledge it as reality and be there right there with it. And when you're getting a yes, good, you're getting confirmation. When they're kind of freezing up, you're kind of off the trail. But I think it's that stuff. There's no quick hack for a thing like that. If you want it to last, if you want that kind of habit change to last, that's the process. It's that motivational interviewing process. And that's the process across the board for any challenge, to be honest.
I completely agree. I mean, especially when you're working with children, because they need to trust you. They need to feel connected to you. And if you come in there guns blazing, making them feel shameful about their eating habits, they're going to shut down. They're going to close off. They're not going to be listening to anything you're saying.
The worst.
And so, yeah. And so I align with that so much. And I work with children in a very unique way if I'm going to be doing long-term sessions with them as well. So that makes a lot of sense to me. And it's all about empowering the children. You and I and Heidi and many others that I speak with, we get along because we are on the same page. It's not about dominating them or telling them what to do. It's about empowering them and educating them. And nutrition and healthy eating habits is a journey. It's not something that happens overnight. It's not like people are going to watch this interview and you're going to give three top tips and everything's going to be great.
It
doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way.
You really have to get to know your child too, and recognize why they have those certain eating. It takes effort. So for me, I know my daughter's triggers. I know why she's eating. Someone else could be observing and say, oh, she's doing this, she's doing that, or she's, like discount it. And I'm like, no, that's not at all what's happening, because I pay attention and I watch and I observe and I don't say anything. And I'm very objective about what I put on the situation. Whereas my other boys, it's different. They have their reasons. And so we have to honor that. And I think
absolutely.
that it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is why, we do align so well, Sherri, because it's a completely different paradigm than a lot of people are used to. And it is different often than how we were raised, right? We know that there's a cycle involved. And, I know you speak often of breaking those cycles and ourselves, right? We were raised however we were raised, by parents that were doing whatever they were doing. And chances are they were passing on something that they had. And so it's not always easy to shift gears, and it is a process, and there is no top 10 tips to a perfect life. Regardless of what your favorite influencer tells you, it's not going to be a TikTok. Now there could be things that are inspiring. Sometimes one simple statement can unlock an amazing kind of reframe. So I'm a believer in that. But as far as this journey, that's exactly what this is. And it can be fun to be curious, to stay committed, and to understand there's going to be struggles and ups and downs. I think really establishing like the environment, right out the gate is what I really try to do in homes, is a low pressure environment. You talked about at the top where, you're not shaming, you're not going to put that on your child where there's this harsh judgment about eating a food or not eating enough of a food. There should be a low pressure environment always. So that's actually, I found to be a big, place and opportunity to tackle in homes, is what is the food environment like? Is the family sitting down for dinner together? Is there just one child? Are there multiple children, right? And at that table, there might be 5 children with all unique needs. They got unique dietary needs. They have unique temperament, right? You're talking about a really complex puzzle. So the first order of business is to establish a place where everybody is feeling relaxed. And ideally at the table, the last thing we want to be doing is giving nutrition advice to children when we're at the table, because then they're going to start associating the table with a lecture.
So true.
And that is something that a lot of people have to learn to not do, because that is the time they want to do those things. But when we can set that environment where it's about us coming together as human beings at a table, then food starts to kind of it doesn't have that association with pressure. Because human beings are associative. If we associate food conversations with pressure and do's and don'ts, it's going to get weird, and it's not going to work. We want to expose food. We want to be relaxed around food for ourselves. And over time, then the doors open up, the guard comes down. Now there's a chance to get some of this great information. Because I got all the information for you, buddy. But if the doors close and you're just peeking out, we're not going to really move forward, right?
It's so true. Yeah, and the table is, you brought up a good point, and I have talked about this a couple of times. Don't use the dinner table, dinner time as the opportunity to trap your children and tell them everything. You give them all the lectures that you've been waiting for all day, and tell them what they're doing wrong and what they're, and all, a lot of people do. And then it becomes a horrible experience for everybody. And then everyone dreads the kids.
The dinner table, right?
Yeah. And then they associate that with dinner and meals in general. And so it should be happy time. It should be like talking about happy things, and
it's time to connect.
Just to connect, and no pressure, not this big deep conversation, certainly not about nutrition or losing weight or this or that. It's just not a good time. I completely agree with that. It's about the other times that you take advantage of when you're dropping nuggets. Like for me, when I do it is when when my daughter likes to cook with me whenever she can. So while I'm cooking with her, I use that opportunity to explain some things here and there.
That's a great time.
But it's not in a confrontational way. It has nothing. It's not having anything to do with her. I don't tell her when she's trying to eat a cookie why she should eat a cookie. It's when she's not eating, and it's completely different, and we're talking about food in general. So that helps as well. And I use opportunities, but don't trap your children at the
I love it.
table.
Don't trap. I love that term. I'm taking that, by the way. I'm going to put your permission. I just trap them at the table. It's like their head is on a chopping block at that point. It's so true. Another quick thing that I could say, the mind went to this. And so it's just another juicy nugget that I found to be very useful. There's an idea, and it's not my original idea, but it's a wonderful, quick and easy tip, right? If you guys want a quick and easy tip, there's a concept called pedestaling when it comes to food. And what pedestaling is, it's this idea of, well, if you finish your plate, you'll get dessert, right?
Oh gosh.
Oh boy, right? You're already, you get it, right? And what we're framing now is what we're doing is we're putting that dessert item on this pedestal. Like, we didn't have to do that, but what that does as a framework for the child is, I've got a mission. You've told me I have to finish my plate, for one, which is ridiculous, because then now they're eating according to some arbitrary plate portion and not actually eating to their own needs, right? Yes. What does that even have anything to do with them feeding their body? Finishing a plate is completely random. So that's already problem one. And then this idea that now the dessert item all of a sudden has crazy importance that it never needed to have.
Exactly.
And so it's far better to, if we want the relationship to be where, like, the same as we see humans, we're on a human playing field, right? We're all kind of on the playing field called human beingness. We're humaning, right? If we're going to plan for a dessert that night, right? And there's good, better, best desserts that we can get into, but let's say we've got some kind of thing that, like, we want to have a dessert. Put all the food on the table at the same time, with no conversation about an end game to try to eat through that food, to get to that food. That's how you establish that this is all just ways to nourish our body. This food does that. That food does that. If we're bringing certain vegetables to the table that we know this child does not like, that child eats, better to just have that exposure If they don't want to eat it, that's okay. Have the exposure. What people sometimes do, they throw their hands up, they get mad, they get frustrated. They're showing that frustration. They stop. They just stop bringing the food to the table. And now we miss out on the exposure, right? Because there's this frustration. So all of these things really matter, but the pedestaling thing is huge. And
Oh
I've
gosh.
seen that alone be an absolute game changer for parents who are like, wow, okay, that was cool. Right? But we were brought up. I mean, I was brought up from that parenting style of kind of like, eat this, finish your food. You know, they're starving kids in Africa, that whole line, right? And I used to think like, how am I helping someone? I'd love to help somebody in Africa, but how is me
I
finishing my food tonight going to help this poor kid?
I have
Right?
said that exact thing for my own programming at one point, and I literally, I'm admitting this publicly that I have literally been that parent that I'm like, do you know how lucky you are? There are children in the world that don't get to eat, and then, and my kids are looking at me, and I think my son Skylar was the one that looked at me, mom, and he's like, mom, like, I can't remember his words, but he basically said what you just said, very in a very articulate way, like, how does me eating help them get food? And I was like, I
That is
don't
like, it's just an
know.
amazing, isn't that just amazing? Like, you're just like,
Yeah,
yeah, that's kind of you make a good point.
yeah. And now I kind of flip it. I'm like, I just want you to appreciate the food that you have,
Yeah,
but this notion of finishing your whole plate is really bad because it
you're
it
going to create
encourages
disordered
us,
eating.
or it doesn't encourage us, rather, to follow our body, and we need to go in the internal clock when we're full. We should listen to that, and
Correct.
not the amount of food, because sometimes we overpour. Maybe mom put too much on the plate and you feel like you have to eat it, and then you go through life feeling like wherever you go, and restaurants these days, they're like 2-3 meals worth of portions on it.
Correct.
And if you
Bingo.
go sit down and feel like I need to finish it, like you're gonna overindulge every time. So
Right.
there has to be some boundaries where we learn that we don't have to eat everything, but it doesn't mean you throw it in the trash. Maybe you save it for
Yeah.
later or
You,
whatever.
you, you
Um,
demonstrate, or like, you demonstrate you're saving food. We're not going to throw it away. You're demonstrating.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. One thing that you said that wouldn't work in our house, and but it could in others, but it's a great idea, is the putting everything out, because there's a few in our house that tend to overeat if it's in front of them. So we
Right.
purposely make our plates in the kitchen, and then because otherwise they'll just keep adding to they're not hungry. They're just talking, and then just more, 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 more. And so we stop that, because this way they are aware of what they have to eat, and then when they're done eating, instead of going to get food right away, we ask our body, are we actually hungry? Are you
Yeah.
actually hungry, or do you just like the way the food tastes, so you go and you get a second helping?
Right.
Because putting that pedestal with the dessert is also a really bad idea, because then it encourages them to overeat, and because the prize is the dessert. And
Right.
in my house, I do the opposite. I actually tell them, hey, if we don't have dessert every night on purpose, but like you
Sure.
said, once in a while, we know we're going to go out for ice cream or something, or we have fruit for dessert. I try not to have too much in my house, but when they know that it's there, I always say, if they want more helpings, I say, are you going to be hungry for that ice cream later if
Yeah.
you have more food? So I try to make them think about it that way. Like, are you going to have room for that? You might get a stomach ache. So I just make
Yeah.
them think about the choices that they're making, so
Yeah.
they don't
Yeah.
overindulge.
I think in your situation, to the point on bringing things to the table, it could be in your situation that's why consultations are helpful, right? Because you can kind of plug into the person if you
Yeah.
need. And I would say, what I would say then is bring a little of everything, but be mindful of how much is coming to the table, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that way you're getting the assortment, but you're predetermining. You're putting some restraints on how much is available, the availability. But yeah, these are the things that take repetition and practice, and deprogramming and reprogramming, and people aren't going to
Yes.
get this perfect. It's not going to, and it isn't about that. It's about continually refining some sort of system to where it can be sustainable, something that feels like, okay, like everybody in the family is kind of like, now we're kind of firing on all cylinders, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk about as well a big challenge that I have had, because I talk to so many different people with various financial, backgrounds and things like that,
Yeah.
attainability. And one of the biggest questions I get is, it's really great for people who have a lot of money to eat organic and super healthy and fresh and all of this. But what about
Sure.
those that are on a budget and can barely afford food? What are ways that you coach parents as well to help their child eat healthy, but they have a budget, so they can't just go to.
Yeah. Right. Right. It's an amazing question. It's a common thing that I deal with, and there's just an approach to it, right? So first of all, we want to kind of get a sense of like what operating budget are we really on? I mean, are we really destitute, or are we, kind of,
Yeah.
there's levels to that, but in generally speaking, there's great opportunity in those situations, I've found, because I used to say, good news, guess what? There are ways to eat amazing that aren't going to break the bank, and we'll get into it. And that is often relies is your kind of whole food ingredients, right? So then you're getting into staple items, right? It might be rice, potatoes, right? Buying in bulk. One thing that I do it myself. I'm actually lucky. I live right across from a grocery outlet, which they do like clearance and stuff, and they have like organic items. And what I will usually do is like, we'll start making a list together of categories of things, right? So what are some starches that you like? Like, I'll bring up a food list on the screen, right, during a Zoom call, and we start to do some virtual shopping. And we'll go by category. And why I want to establish categories first is then when they can go into the market, I'll say, look, there's almost always something in the category you're looking for that will be on sale, right? So, and then I'll ask, are you loyal to a certain brand? Because if you don't have like some kind of brand loyalty, this is a great technique to save money. Because what grocery stores do is they'll rotate, they'll have some item, right? Might be like almond butter, which is, God, this almond butter is usually whatever. One brand will be on sale. So I'll kind of coach them to look for those opportunities. Frozen, right? When you can find something on a deep discount that's frozen, wonderful, because now you're able to store that. It's going to keep well. So we look at frozen or non-perishables, these kind of things. So those are some of the things that I do in terms of for a budget. And I know Heidi was my first roommate. Okay. Now when we
Really?
moved to LA together, 20
I don't
something.
think I knew that. Okay.
Okay, 22 years ago, because this is kind of relevant, we were both kind of broke.
Yeah.
And I, being the health conscious guy I am, I was having to live the game of, I was living the struggle life, but I would stock up on certain things. I was buying, I go to like Smart and Final, it's like one of these bulk places, and I would just buy bags of 5-pound bag of rice, and I get eggs and tuna fish and certain staple items like that, and then look for sales. So yeah, I mean, the organic thing, I mean, I think it's hysterical that, I feel like the burden of labeling, I feel like, something that is sprayed with chemicals should have the burden of labeling, right?
Yes. Yes.
Right? Because it's like, why are we, something that nothing was done to it?
You have to pay more for it
Right,
too.
it's like how does this work? So yeah, there's just different strategies for budgeting, but that's my overall. And then we kind of start getting into case by case. But I try to see if they've got some kind of outlet. A lot of times out here, like, people don't even know about the grocery outlets, and they're like, oh my God, I didn't even know this place existed. And then they're able to like, I'll save 50% on my groceries at a place like that. So
Yeah,
yeah,
those are all really good tips. I love that about
yeah,
finding the sale items, because like you said, if you're in search of fruit, if you're not married to apples that day, maybe you find the bananas on sale or something on sale in the fruit category, and vegetables and things like that.
right.
And really just staying out of the processed food section as much as
As
possible.
much as possible. Yeah.
That's the key, but of course we can't avoid it. And that's where all the children want to go, where the chips and the cookies and the
Yeah.
the goldfish
It's
crackers and all of that.
colorful.
That's colorful, has all the
It's
food dyes in
marketed
it.
toward them.
Yeah.
It's bright and
And
shiny and
they're smart too. You could give the children the healthy versions that they have now and the non-healthy, and like 10 out of 10 times they will be able to pick out the unhealthy one because they're used to the taste of it, of
right.
that fake ingredients in it.
Yeah.
It's really a shame.
Yeah. And that's a whole area in itself. You know, that's a
Yeah.
whole show right there, Sherri. I
I know,
mean,
right? Well, what
I
about
mean, this is a
allergies?
whole show.
I know.
Everything
Well,
we talked about today, I think we could do a jump off for an
yeah,
entire
we have so
episode.
much more to talk about, honestly. Like, this is just the beginning. Maybe the last thing we can talk about today. I'd love to get into allergies because it is such a big thing right
Sure.
now. The abundance of allergies within children right now is off
Yeah.
the chart. I mean, every child is allergic to something right now. Dairy, whether it's the
100%.
dairy, the peanuts, the soy, so many things. And why do you, first of all, why do you think that is? With in your opinion, why do you think that is? And what
Sure.
can parents do to kind of navigate through all of the
Yeah.
allergies?
Yeah, it is factually on the rise. And you know, in the time period that I've been doing nutrition, I remember back in the 90s, it was, you know, kind of a rare, you know, you had kid allergies, but it was,
Yeah.
you know, kind of an uncommon thing that you'd come across. And now it's just like almost like the default. It's not even so much like, does your child have allergies? What are they allergic to?
What are they allergic to?
So it's multifactorial. One big factor in that comes down to at birth. So whether there was a birth canal delivery or cesarean delivery. So why that is has to do with the way that the immune system is conditioned from day one, right? So vaginal delivery, a child will get essentially inherit a gulp of probiotic,
Mm-hmm.
bacteria from the mother, which helps to begin to inform and train the immune system from the jump. Having C-sections, they've increased dramatically, right? They're exposed to the room, and so whatever the room is offering is kind of what the immune system is going to begin kind of working with, right? And then you'll also get into bottle feeding versus breastfeeding, which is also impactful on the
Yeah.
development of the immune system. The next one is huge, which is a hyper sanitized, overly hygienic, antibacterial environment that we live in, where children are not being exposed to dirt and microbes and bugs and things in the environment. The immune system needs training. You know, it trains itself to the environment. And so as much as sanitation has certainly helped, I mean, basic sanitation, washing of hands, and having you know, trash being picked up, obviously that's a great thing that we don't want to give up in
Of
modern,
course.
right? But children naturally, they you know, they'll slam dirt into their mouth. They just do. This is what they love. They just they're dirt eaters, right? They're doing that. That's nature's way of saying, let's, all that stardust that I talked about at the start, like they're trying to kind of get it into their body. So there's that. And then now we will get into other contributing factors, which would be the exposure, the chemical exposure in the food supply, and not only just the food supply, you know, household products, yada, yada, right?
Yes.
You're going to see an impact on the intestinal tract, you know, of leaky gut, etc., where, you know, these compounds are essentially inhibiting our ability to create a barrier between things that should or shouldn't go into our bloodstream. And you essentially create a hypersensitive body, right? You have an immune system that wasn't conditioned and fine-tuned at an early start. You have exposure to compounds that are dysregulating the, you know, immune process, and you end up with a kind of a hyper response, and that will manifest in an allergy, asthma, these things. What do? It's a step by step. It's multifactorial as well, because you got, right, depending on the age, right? The younger, the better that you can pick up on some of these, because you can begin to kind of, you know, intervene in an earlier age. Certain strains of probiotics at a young age that are geared toward, you know, infant and toddler, like those specific products, not just any old grab any old probiotic off the shelf, but those specific strains that are needed early in life can be useful. Addressing the diet where it could be one of many things. Sometimes it's a major cleanup that's needed, right? We just have to get honest about, okay, are we exposing the child to a heavy amount of food dyes and of, our glyphosates and these kind of things. So cleaning that up. And then there is amazing, it is a painstaking process, but there are amazing techniques through micro exposure where you can begin to take what was seen as a lifelong allergy and you can turn that around. That is an area that is out of my lane of expertise, but this does exist.
Part of it, yeah.
Right, where it is literally like tiny exposures over time where you're reintroducing, you're training the body back to be for the ability to handle certain foods, and that's a strategy there. So, that's hope that answers that question. That's
Yeah, I mean, that was amazing. I think it's very informative. I agree with everything you said. I mean, there's lots of others as well. For those that had this done as a
there are
child,
other things as well. Yes.
they put not even just the toxins, and this is not a controversial topic. We're not going to go into that.
Right.
But we'll put aside the toxins in that and the poisons, but the eggs and the peanuts that they use in these can't say the word.
Yep.
Causes your body to interpret that as something that it needs to fight against.
Correct.
So when you eat those things later in life, your body's like, oh, bad, and it attacks it. And that's why we have severe anaphylactic reactions more than ever to peanuts and to eggs and to dairy.
Yeah.
And so that's a huge one as well. So something
Absolutely.
to think about.
And there's probably, when we finish today, I'm probably going to be like, oh, there's probably like 10 more things I could potentially bring up to that.
Everything that we talked about today, we could do one show just on that.
these are the kind of big culprits, for sure. And yeah, it is, and I'd also say that addressing breathing, and Heidi and I did a whole talk on breathing and mouth breathing and that as well. Because if a child is breathing too much through their mouth, that means a couple things. They're not using their nose, which means that the nose is actually a key part of the immune system. You're filtering, you're humidifying the air. There's nitric oxide in there that can kind of handle certain exposures. Breathing through the mouth, you get a cold mouth, dry, inflammation in the back of the throat makes the breathing problem worse. You might get facial development issues where, a thinner face, the teeth, there's malocclusion, cavities, like that starts to actually create these things too. So you're getting a poor breathing pattern, respiratory issues, so there's that component too that's really fascinating. And again, a whole show's worth of fun on that one.
We got a lot of shows to do, Lauren.
Yeah. See what's happening.
I tell you.
Right out the gate.
And a lot of the things too that we're dealing with are these Starseed children. They're high frequency, so they're coming in and they are very extremely sensitive to the pesticides and the toxins and all of that. And so I think it's just part of the next generation of this evolutionary process in our bodies, where the children are showing us what we should eat and what we shouldn't eat. And so one of the biggest tips I have for the parents, and we'll close with today, and you can let me know what you think about it, is stop forcing your child to eat the things that you think they should eat, or don't make them become vegan. Maybe if they want to eat meat, let them have some meat. If they are protesting meat and you're a meat eater, let them follow their own intuitive knowing.
Find their way.
Instead of forcing them to drink milk. I mean, my mom used to make me drink a glass of milk every night at dinner, and I would cry and scream. I'd hold my nose. I would gag. I just thinking about it still, I never understood. So not forcing them to do anything. Let them take the lead. I think give them a little bit more credit on what they think they need.
100%. Should is a word that I continually try to check myself on. I should check myself more, right? You should do this. Here's what you should do. This sort of thing. You're really not doing your child a favor with that approach, to be honest. And I think children do need to arrive. I think the job on our end, as we do have to look, let's face it, the child is looking to us for some guidance, right? So there's that part of it, right? For sure, we need to be able to kind of set them up for success, but we set them up for success through their ability to make decisions, right? That's when we know we're doing okay. And then we have to have trust in that process, which is the leap. That's the leap that we all take when we're doing these things. And sometimes you gotta sit there and you're like cringe while you're leaping. But you have to trust that the net will appear, because you're setting them up to be able to make those determinations. And you're exactly right. There might be children that just lean towards certain things and away from others. And this idea that we'd say, well, you should be doing that and you should be doing that. Like, how can I get to my child to eat X food? I really think they should be doing that. Now, my take on that is let's look at this realistically, right? Because we have to like honor the fact that like the child needs nourishment. So what are we really talking about here? And it's very rare that there's a true deficiency where it's going to manifest in some kind of health issue, right? So we have to establish that. If we're in a place where it's like child is growing, they're hitting their benchmarks, growth is like things, then let them choose from their selections of foods. So I absolutely am 100% on board with that. I have oddly enough, today I posted it on my Instagram. I have an acronym, and it's for this kind of mindful process I encourage for children. It's Nourish, N.O.U.R.I.S.H. Notice your hunger, right? So you kind of get them to notice their hunger. Observe thoughts, observe emotions, right? These are things that if we demonstrate to children, if we introduce these ideas young, can be really helpful for this process. You use your senses, use your intuition. R, respect your body, right? I, intentionally choose your food. S, slow down or savor. And H for honor your health. H, honor health. It's a way that we can guide, and if we can, I'll just kind of close my thing, my little spiel up here, is that we're trying to lead by an example. And a good question for parents to ask is not like, what should I get my kid to eat, but what are qualities I would love to see in my child? What are qualities I would just love to bring out? What are qualities I notice? And what are qualities that I would just really love for them to exhibit as a human being? And then that next question is, am I exhibiting those? And that process, that question can be profound, because often parents come to me, they're doing the best they can. Again, all parents, I really do believe that like people are just sort of doing what they can do. But when we ask a question like that and really examine it closely, are you exhibiting these qualities? So be that, embody that. And that's what we should aspire to, is to just embody those qualities, that which we would love to see in our children. And then also leave ourselves open to being completely surprised at qualities that we didn't have on our agenda. Yes. I just noticed something about my kid today that's really special and unique, and I'm gonna stay curious and stay adaptable for when things change.
Oh my God, I love all of that. And I'll put in the description below your acronym, Nourish. I think that was.
I'll send that over to you.
Yeah, send that to me. I'm going to put that in so people can see that. How can people get a hold of you if they want more information?
Sure. So Lawrence, LAWRENCE at kidsgethealthy.com is a direct way to reach out. You can go to kidsgethealthy.com and find more information, kind of a little background on me. You can book through kidsgethealthy.com. And that's the best way. And on social media, I'm on Instagram is Kids Get Healthy USA.
Oh, perfect. I'll put all those links below as well. Yeah. And people want to visit your website, they can hopefully, I'm sure you have resources on there and things.
Find me on there. Yeah. It's going to be changing. The site's going to be going through a little bit of a change coming up, but right now it's the original, it's the OG landing page.
That's okay.
Yeah. So.
Oh, I love that. Well, this has been I truly value this conversation, Lawrence, and I'm grateful for meeting you through Heidi. Likewise. And our introduction. And we have a lot more conversations to have in the future, because there's so much more we can talk about. This is such an important topic, and it's not just about the children, the parents
Yeah.
And those watching this that don't have children, you know, all of the things we're saying, it relates to all of us, and
It's
just
all
developing
human.
better, yeah, more healthy habits with food, and all of those things are relevant across the board. So it's such an important topic. So thank you for coming on today, Lawrence. I've
Thank
enjoyed this
you.
conversation.
This was awesome. I knew it would be, but man, this is what you're doing with your channel is really unique and special, and everything you're doing with your organizations. It's just been, this is super cool for me. Really an honor to get to chat with you today.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, thank you to everybody watching this. I hope this video found all of you well today. Until next time, bye everybody.
Bye.